Columbus, Ohio. April 1st, 2006. A Friday night bleeding into Saturday morning. The bars are closing. The crowds are thinning. And somewhere inside a building, a man is about to stop existing. His name was Brian Shaffer, 27 years old, a second-year medical student at Ohio State. He walked into a bar that night. Security cameras captured him entering. No camera ever recorded him leaving. The building had one public exit. That exit was monitored. His phone has never been used since. His cards, his accounts, his body has never been found. How does a man vanish from inside a building? The Ugly Tuna Saloona, that was the name of the place. A second-floor bar in Columbus's Arena District, popular with the college crowd. The kind of place where weekends started loud and ended louder. Brian had been there earlier that evening with friends. He left, then came back for another round. That second visit would be his last appearance anywhere. Security footage captured him at 1:55 in the morning, talking with two women near the entrance. He appeared relaxed, maybe slightly intoxicated, nothing unusual. Then he stepped out of frame. And that was it. No footage of him on the escalator going down. No footage of him using any door. Just a man who walked into a room and never walked out. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand where Brian Shaffer was in his life. He was weeks away from completing his second year of medical school. His future looked certain. But 2 weeks before his disappearance, his mother had died of cancer. Brian had been close to her. Those who knew him said he was struggling, though he didn't always show it. The night of March 31st, Brian went out with friends, a group of medical students looking to blow off steam. They ended up at the Ugly Tuna Saloona in the Arena District. Brian left with a friend named Clint Florence around midnight. They went to another bar. Then, around 1:30 in the morning, Brian and Clint returned to the Ugly Tuna for one more round. Clint later said he went outside briefly while Brian stayed at the bar. When he came back in, he couldn't find Brian. He assumed his friend had left. He waited outside when the bar closed. Brian never emerged. According to investigators, the Ugly Tuna Saloona had only one public exit accessible to patrons, the escalator leading down to street level. That escalator was monitored by security cameras. One of the original investigators on the case stated he could say with, quote, 100% certainty that Shaffer did not leave via that escalator. The bar did have other exits, but they were service doors and emergency exits, not publicly accessible and typically alarmed or locked. Construction was ongoing in the building at the time. Some theories suggest Brian may have used a construction exit or service door that night. But none of these theories explain why he would, or how he would have known about them. The building's layout was complicated by ongoing renovations. There were passages and areas that weren't fully documented on official plans. Spaces where a person could move or be moved without being seen. After Brian disappeared, investigators reviewed hours of security footage. They saw him enter. They saw him talking to those two women near the entrance. They never saw him leave through any recorded exit. Investigators confirmed there were camera blind spots in the building, areas where someone could theoretically move undetected. But even accounting for those blind spots, Brian's path out remains unexplained. The two women Brian was last seen talking to were identified. They were strangers to him, just people he'd struck up a conversation with. They told police they had no idea what happened to him after he walked away. In the 19 years since Brian Shaffer vanished, his cell phone has never been used. His credit cards have never been swiped. His bank accounts have never been accessed. His car remained parked in a nearby garage. It hadn't been moved. Inside were his personal belongings. Everything he owned was right where he'd left it. His girlfriend at the time, Alexis, was overseas when he disappeared. She'd been traveling in Florida before heading to the Caribbean with family. They had been planning to get engaged. When Brian didn't answer his phone the next day, his friends grew worried. His father, Randy, contacted police. The search began. It would become one of the most puzzling missing persons cases in Ohio history. Columbus police launched an intensive investigation. They interviewed dozens of people, They examined every frame of security footage. They even drained a nearby river. They found nothing. His friend Clint Florence was questioned extensively. Years later, when asked to take a polygraph test, he refused. He has never been named a suspect. But his refusal fueled speculation that continues today. No one has ever been charged. No one has ever been officially named a person of interest. The case remains open with Columbus Police. Tips still occasionally come in. Police say they have 3 working theories about what happened to Brian Shaffer. They have declined to discuss those theories publicly. One theory, Brian left to a construction exit and met with foul play outside the building. Someone was waiting. Someone knew he'd be vulnerable. Another theory, he never left the building at all. That somewhere in the construction zones and the spaces between walls, his body was concealed and never found. A third possibility, Brian chose to disappear. That grief over his mother's death, or something else entirely, drove him to walk away from his own life. But if so, where did he go? And how has he stayed hidden for 2 decades? Each theory has its problems. Each leaves questions unanswered. The construction areas were eventually searched. The building was eventually demolished. Nothing was ever found. The Ugly Tuna Saloona closed years ago. The entire building where Brian was last seen has been demolished. If any physical evidence remained there, it is gone. Brian's father, Randy, spent years searching for answers. He posted flyers, he gave interviews, he held on to hope long after most would have let go. He died in 2017, never knowing what happened to his son. The Arena District has changed. New buildings stand where old ones fell. New bars fill with new crowds on Friday nights. But the question remains, unanswered, underneath all of it. In 2024, on the 18th anniversary of his disappearance, local news outlets again covered the story. The case was still open. No new leads had emerged. Every few years, someone online claims to have new information, a theory, a sighting, a confession. Each time, investigators follow up. Each time, the leads go cold. Podcasters and amateur investigators have devoted countless hours to the case. They've analyzed the footage frame by frame. They've mapped the building's layout. They've interviewed people who were there that night. Still, the central mystery holds. The footage shows him entering. No footage shows him leaving. The building had one public exit. 20 years later, a medical student remains missing. Cases like Brian Shaffer's remind us that impossible disappearances are rarely impossible. There is always an answer. It's just that sometimes the pieces stay scattered too long to reassemble. Buildings have more exits than floor plans show. Security cameras have more blind spots than we assume. A person determined to disappear, or someone determined to make another person disappear, can exploit those gaps. The case remains open. Columbus Police still accept tips. If you have information about Brian Shaffer's disappearance, the number is available through their missing persons unit. If this case interests you, the original security footage is partially available online. Watching it yourself, you'll see exactly what investigators saw. A man walking into frame. And then, if stories like this one stay with you, hit subscribe. We cover cases like Brian Shaffer's every week, the disappearances that don't make sense, the questions that don't have easy answers. Brian Shaffer would be 46 years old today. His girlfriend Alexis has moved on with her life, as has everyone who knew him. But the absence remains, the question mark that refuses to resolve. His family has asked that people continue to share his story, that they not forget. Because somewhere, someone knows what happened in that building on April 1st, 2006. Someone saw something, someone helped, someone stayed quiet, or someone simply got lucky enough that the truth stayed hidden for 19 years and counting. Maybe the answer is mundane. A door that shouldn't have been open. A camera that blinked at the wrong second. A coincidence stacked on coincidence until a man simply slipped through. Or maybe the answer is darker. Something planned, something calculated, something that happened in a space with no witnesses and no cameras, while outside the world kept turning. The truth is, we don't know. After 19 years, we may never know. Some cases stay cold. Some questions stay unanswered. Some people just vanish. The Ugly Tuna Saloona is gone now. The building that held it is rubble and memory. But Brian Shaffer's case file remains open in a basement somewhere in Columbus. Waiting. Somewhere in the footage, there might be something everyone missed. A shadow in the corner of a frame. A door opening when it shouldn't. A shape that didn't belong. Or maybe the camera blinked. Maybe it was just long enough. Maybe in that dark second a man stepped sideways into nothing, and no one has seen him since. That's the story of Brian Shaffer. A man who walked into a bar and never walked out.